Welcome again to When Will It End, the Massachusetts movie podcast where two massholes from the Commonwealth here in the Bay Area, Bay State, goddammit, we watch a whole series of film. And I know what you're wondering. Do they watch part of the series of film? Do they start with one film and then don't watch the other films in the series? Well, let me get that thought right out of your brain. No. These guys, these massholes, these New England so-and-sos from the Bay State, crabs and such, lobster. And I'm Josh.
I'm Charles.
Yeah. So we are talking today, of course, about a little movie called Hot Fuzz.
Hot Fuzz. Hot Fuzz.
Hot Fuzz. Hot Fuzz. Who's got the fuzz? But first, the film report.
Oh, yeah, we were both in sync there.
My beautiful fiance realized I had never seen Josie and the Pussycats this week.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched Josie and the Pussycats, and that movie fucking rules.
Oh,
that
good.
movie is fantastic. I find it's the closest corollary to it, I think, is Starship Troopers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's so how many decapitations, limbs flying off?
Well, Michael Ironsides features prominently in both films. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's another satire that people at the time are like, what is this? This is just covered in corporate logos, and it's stupid. And it's like, nope, it's making fun of all of that, and it's very smart, and you're stupid. And later you will look dumb for having thought it was a straight take, because, baby, they was winking. Quink.
Yeah, it's funny to be a critic back then, to have all of your dumb, shitty opinions. Like, when we were talking about the Catwoman episode, and like all these men were like, fuck, I want to fuck that Catwoman. Man, that Catwoman looks so fucking hot in her skin-tight leather. And now that's just recorded forever. Is this dude wanted to waste an entire paragraph of his critique of a movie on how hot Catwoman is?
Right. Like, that was part of critical culture at that time, was Michelle Pfeiffer, daddy-like. And people were like, yeah, that's a good review. Well done.
B+.
Good stuff you've done there. So I really, I gotta say, Josie and the Pussycats, the movie fucking rules. It's so much smarter than it needs to be, and I loved it.
Wait, what part of the episode are we in? What did you just call me? And then we beep, beep, beep?
It's the film report.
Okay. Can I also do a film report?
Well, of course you are, I like to think you are half of the show. So I would love if you delivered on your half.
I recently watched Grease for the first time, and oh boy, do I not understand that movie at all, and hated every second of sitting through it.
Well, let me offer this to you. We both went to the same expensive private liberal arts college in Western Massachusetts, and
well, I got a discount, so I don't want people thinking that I'm just like can waste money on shit. I got like a 80% discount on this college. But anyway,
I don't know if I got that. I was a work-study student. I helped actively pay off my tuition while going to college. So I was certainly I wasn't there.
I'm going to give a little hint to all you listeners out there, especially during pandemic times. If we have any listeners who are of college age, I would recommend this one life hack. Go when you are older than 26. Because after 26, your parents are no longer even a part of, unless I guess if you have really poor parents, I don't know. But the whole time, like, I wasn't getting good financial aid because they were like, oh, your parents make money. But once it was me and I was only making like $15,000 a year, it's like, okay, yeah, well, you can just go to college for free. So
right, college is a scam. If you can do anything to not pay close to full tuition, you should do that because it's a scam. But I did do a lot of valuable things in college, like take LSD and watch Grease.
Okay, so what are your thoughts? I hated every second of Grease, and I liked it's not true. I hated almost every second, and I liked Rizzo. Rizzo? Wait,
yes,
that's
Stockard Channing, the great Stockard Channing.
She was great, and I don't think her character really did anything, but I had the idea that her character could have done something important.
Would you like to share that thought, or just?
Oh no, I'm just saying, like, I think that the way she was handled was trash, but like the idea of this, like, she was cool. She could have been a very cool character, and they just didn't do anything with her.
Okay. Well, my thought on Grease is this: watching it on acid, it was kind of like watching Twin Peaks, where it's actually an extremely dark, upsetting depiction of life in America. While I think people remember it as this all-American story, it's really this like violent, darkly sexual story of conformity, and it's actually surprisingly complex. I think. I don't think I would ever casually throw on Grease at this point in my life. I mean, Grease too. Don't get me started. Now that's a film, but Grease, it's really dark and weird. And I think if you engage with it as like an inadvertently critical examination of American life, as opposed to a halcyon days, happy days kind of vibe, I think it's a lot more interesting.
Yeah, I just don't think it actually does anything to critique it other than showing, like, it's a showcase of it. But I don't think the movie was trying to do anything other than have a good time.
Okay, last episode, listeners will remember Charles was like, authorial intent doesn't mean anything, okay?
No,
so maybe
that's
you can,
not what I'm saying.
Maybe you can judge it based on what it inadvertently reveals as opposed to its authorial intent.
I'm just saying I don't think it's a very interesting, unintentional movie because it doesn't do much other than say, yeah, this is what people were thinking back then. It's a nice, first... primary source, not first source. It's a good primary source document to show how shitty culture was back then. But I'm not super interested in it, especially it's a musical. I hate musicals.
Musicals as a rule are not good. I think there's a few exceptions to that, but yes, broadly I'm with you. I guess I like the idea of this beloved, cherished piece of pop culture really just showing the grim desperation of life. And I like
That's
that
true.
People tend to like, oh, it's fun. They race cars and stuff. And it's like, it's actually just like pretty bleak and full of pain. And again, at the end, this countercultural depiction of the greaser ultimately becomes just another method of conformity into a pretty safe.
I don't know. Are there interviews? Because honestly, this is
Are there
weird.
interviews?
Of the people that made it, because this was a movie made, when did it come out? 80s?
No, that's 70s.
78?
Yeah.
1978, I think.
And by the way, the same year the Grateful Dead played at the Great Pyramids of Giza.
Cool. They were using 50s culture to talk about something. Maybe this is like a strange, very hidden satire of a shitty world. And maybe I just am not giving enough credit.
Well, have you seen American Graffiti?
I don't think so, actually.
I mean, that's another. That's a pretty bleak movie at the end. Like someone dies in Vietnam, and Ron Howard plays a complete piece of shit, and like it's another like the 50s and the radio and the cars, and it's similarly a somewhat bleak depiction of like, in this post-war boom, how limited and sad the American imagination was, and in this pre-Vietnam, like in the Vietnam vortex that would suck American imperialism and culture into this inextricable path of no return. I mean, I don't know. I think they're interesting documents of this because like Happy Days is full on. Hey, what a fun time the 50s was, and Grease and American Graffiti are not that simple.
Right. And I think in my commitment to being a better podcaster, I will compare this to Hot Fuzz in a second. But I think for me, I hated Grease because it chose to, if it is a searing satire of an age gone by that still has repercussions in the current era, it chose to do it in a method which I find completely unpalatable. And just the musical... I don't know, the way they try to like have plot points in song where I can't even focus on it because I'm so distracted by how much I hate it. It just doesn't work for me. Whereas a Hot Fuzz, perhaps using, and Shaun of the Dead, the satire, is much more close to the original source, which allows for you to be mildly confused, like, oh, is this or is this not? But then ultimately it works best to tell the story and to talk about what they want to talk about.
Okay, we get it. You don't like musicals. I think what Grease is interesting is that in the era of like a new robust American fascism and ethno-nationalism and the Blue Lives Matter glorification of this militarized society we live in where every possible means of segregation should be enforced with lethal, deadly, intentionality or whatever. I'm
just going to cut out that tiny clip just so it sounds like you just said.
Every possible means of segregation should be enforced with lethal, deadly, intentionality or whatever.
Anyway, sorry, that was dumb. I'm gonna cut that out.
Okay, good stuff.
Shouldn't have interrupted.
Don't try to swing outside the zone, to borrow a baseball phrase here. See, there's a lot of great hitters out there, okay? But they're just chopping. They're chopping. They want to get that sweet, sweet dinger. They want to knock that little ball over that goddamn old fence. But you know what? Once in a while, you hit a blooper single up the first base line and you get on base. And that's fine.
Yeah.
Just try to get on base, chopping. Charles. You're just chopping. And don't cut this out.
Yeah,
this is
I want
good.
that homer.
It's baseball season. Hey, the Mets are putrid. The Mets are so fucking bad.
I'm so
they
sorry.
They suck so much ass. Holy shit. They're so fucking unbelievably bad. Also, everyone in the league has COVID. It's just the stupidest shit of all time. It sucks ass.
Yeah. Basketball was on at work, and my coworker explained to me the bubble, and I'm like, oh, wow, that actually might work.
It's not working that well.
No? Is basketball already infected?
There are already basketball players who have gotten COVID. So, I mean, I don't know. Look, the whole
never
thing
mind.
Anyway, so what I'm trying to say is this. There's this dynamic in American culture where you have like the Kid Rocks and the Ted Nugents of the world, okay? And they're like, we're outlaws and we're badass and we don't take shit from no one. But above anything else, we respect the troops and love cops. You know? So you watch Grease and it's this whole thing like, yeah, those were the days. We were rock and roll rebels, wearing our leather jackets, impregnating women and getting into knife fights. Things were awesome. And despite that obsession with individualism and outlaw culture, that's the exact same kind of person who votes for Trump and mindlessly endorses Blue Lives Matter and is terrified of African Americans with agency or trans people or non-Christian. Like that dynamic, I think, is fascinating.
Yeah.
And the fact that Grease depicts that culture as so desperate, as so conformist, and so spiritually, deficient, I do think that's very revealing. So I think that there's a lot of value in the cultural product of Grease.
I think so too. I just have to ask the question: why they gotta sing so much? Why are they singing all the time?
Well, you see, Charles, when you've got a story that you want to tell Charles, tell Charles. You gotta be fun and do a lot of stuff and wave your hands. Wave your hands. Wave your hands.
Chickadee-choo.
Chickadee-choo indeed, my friend. I like Sondheim stuff because I'm an effete Jew. I like Sondheim. I love Sweeney Todd. By and large, I don't like musicals, though.
There's a really good French musical with Louis Garrel, or however you pronounce his name. I don't know. I like the fake musicals, the ones that are like late '90s, early 2000s. That were like, what if we made a musical, but it was like looked like real life? Those are that's my musical that I go after.
Like, what if a musical wasn't fantastical or...
Yes, what if it's boring and,
right.
and just normal? I think it's called Love Songs. And I like that kind of... That's the music, especially if it's in French where I don't have to really pay attention. I can just read the subtitles. That's perfect musical.
So you're like, what if musicals were boring and didn't really rely on music?
Right. If everyone remembers the 6th episode of our Shrekiverse content where we watched the Shrek musical, my whole thing was like, I'm so fucking glad I saw Shrek recently because... Jesus Christ, I cannot understand what they're saying. My mind just doesn't pay attention to lyrics. I just want to pay attention to the song. Well,
in a way, if you think about like the limits of stagecraft, I mean, musicals are just compensating for all of the things about film that you can tell visually in film. So, I think the evolution of the form is pretty clear. And I'm not trying to just disparage all musicals in one incredibly reductive statement, but like when you don't have to fly to this fantastical liminal realm and instead can use a visual storytelling to achieve a similar fantastical effect that is the craft of storytelling just visually, it's a little hard to go back to like, oh, now I require someone's inner life to be sung to me,
I know, that's sort of why it's like interesting that opera is so popular still. I mean, maybe it's not, but like the fact that rich people get off on being like, yeah, I'm going to watch this thing that I don't understand. And like part of the cultural cachet is that you don't understand what's going on. And it's like, oh, I don't need to understand. It is opera. It's like, no, I want to like they wrote this fucking story. I want to know what's going on.
Well, in the 21st century, the only people who go to operas are antagonists in Mission Impossible movies. At this point.
Well, and the rest
that's what we're down to.
But who's the rest of the crowd? Are they all antagonists? Is that like just a room full of would-be villains and he just chooses the one that he wants to go after that movie?
Charles, in a society where the rich elite are increasingly stratified above the commoners and everything in life is reduced to a series of corporate machinations to completely rob 95% of the planet Earth from basic resources, then yes, if you're in the audience at a goddamn opera, you are a villain. There are no good billionaires.
Yay. Two of the things about Grease. One, the flying car thing was great. The only part that I really understood and sunk into my chest. And the second thing is that if you look at, especially in that era, John Travolta, his mouth is the most beautiful mouth in Hollywood, and the rest of his face is very bizarre. And it's like I couldn't focus on the words. I couldn't focus on anything other than I just was like, all right, I'm just going to look at his face. And I just spent a lot of time just staring at that beautiful mouth and being like, why are his eyes like that?
Well, have you seen Saturday Night Fever?
No, I haven't ever seen that.
I mean, that's like an incredibly bleak movie with like rape and violence and like it's just people remember Travolta as this, like, oh God, he personified the disco 70s or the greaser 50s, and both of those productions are actually they make those periods of time look pretty awful.
Yeah, definitely.
Which
There's
is
that part of that song where he's like, "Did she put up a fight?" Basically, like instantly, like, well, if you rape her, it's okay as long as you got some.
Right. I mean, that's the culture that is inadvertently preserving in amber forever. And obviously, this might shock you. Greece is not, anthropologically speaking, considered an objective piece of academic research. But yeah, I think that whole culture of like, getting some and obviously those issues persist in our society. But the bald face nature of that world is so ugly and shitty and sad, and like no amount of singing, like the singing when watching it on drugs, I was like, this is like amazing. It's just really staring right down the barrel and giving you this horrific vision of the world. I don't know. I think there's a lot to get out of it. I mean, I agree with you. I'm not turning on Grease to like relax. That shit drives me crazy. But I think you can look at it and be like, okay, I understand why this has persisted.
Yeah, it's a very panic-inducing watch for me, and maybe maybe that's what they intended. I don't know. People who actually, Allison likes musicals. Maybe she should have been on this episode rather than sleeping.
Right. Maybe I should have woken up Allison to come to my office to talk about Hot Fuzz, where we may inadvertently stumble over a lengthy discussion of why we think musicals are bad.
Right. Yeah. Maybe we should have thought about that.
I can tell you,
maybe you should have thought about that.
Having known my partner for some time, I don't know how well that would have gone over.
Josh, I gotta say, every episode we record, you're so backlit. You look like the guy who's on the news that is afraid to show his face, but still has some important information to tell the public.
I was waiting for you to say something because I look so crazy in the Messenger window right now because I'm wearing a hat. My face is completely blacked out. I'll take the hat off, okay? There we go. You happy?
Oh, that's much better.
We've adjusted. Yeah, now my face is visible. But I liked the power I held over you for a minute there as I was sort of...
Can you put the hat back on?
Okay, here we go.
Hat back on. I got to move those cans. Yeah, you look like someone just bombed something but is allowed to be on television.
I look like a shadowy informant. Or Deep Throat, the famous guy from the friggin' movie with the guys in the thing.
Right, that can suck those cocks.
No, not that movie. All the President's Men or something with Watergate. Remember when everyone was like, oh, a president broke into an office. Jesus Christ. This is the worst.
Yeah.
And this is like after Andrew Jackson and Teddy Roosevelt and all these fucking monstrous imbeciles, like these vicious racist imperial dogs. And they were like, oh, Nixon broke into an office.
It's the same bullshit like the Democrats impeaching Trump on what did they not talking to Congress or something when he's literally murdering people and making bad decisions that are causing this country to fall apart. Nixon he destroyed this country in so many ways, and we got him on sneaking around.
Yeah,
Jesus
too
Christ.
Sneaky. Well, this obsession with
but not quite sneaky enough.
There's a good way to govern this, monstrous imperial capitalist steamroller that just crushes everything it touches. There isn't. It sucks ass.
It sucks the ass.
Which brings us to today's movie. I think we're a third of the way into the episode. I guess we can meander over to the title movie that we're supposed to be discussing.
Well,
I don't want to rush. I don't want to rush it.
No, that's the one problem with doing movies that we love so much is that we've probably talked about them a lot off mic, and it's maybe not as important for us to even really talk about them that much. But you know what? People came to this goddamn show to listen to us talk about Hot Fuzz, so we will have to try.
Yes. Well, let me say this. I did some research for this episode. Charles, please. That's a pretty bad one. We'll do it again. You're just trying to do it bad. You're doing it very quietly.
No, I'm all right, but I'm right next to the mic. I don't want it to.
Oh, fine. Okay.
So tell me not to peek. Here, I'll hold your mic.
Actually, I peeked a lot. So yeah, here we go. Do it again. But the cadence of it's
so slow. Yeah, I think I'm trying to be quiet, but that also is for me. There.
Okay. So I was reading an interview with Edgar Wright about Hot Fuzz. The thing I'm proudest of with Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead is that we made 2 films set in contemporary Britain. That's something you don't always see, because a lot of films that you see have a slight fairy tale quality to it. Richard Curtis and Guy Ritchie films are equally bullshit in terms of their depiction of what London is like.
Jesus.
Not that their films are necessarily bullshit, but sort of like the London you see in Snatch doesn't really exist, as that the London in Notting Hill doesn't really exist either. To make the film in Notting Hill and not have a single black person in it was really quite something else. So I like the idea that Edgar Wright was like, I'm going to make movies that really depict what contemporary life is really like. And I think that's very interesting, where like you have on one hand the romantic comedy where 2 white people go through a series of miscommunications to find love, and Snatch, which is, this like Baroque gangster comedy where like everyone is some sort of depraved criminal and everything, And I like that he was like, look, I'm going to split the difference and make a movie where it's a movie. Ridiculous shit happens, and there's explosions and silly things happen, and it's heightened. But he's like, I'm actually going to try to like engage with a contemporary England that's recognizable.
I think that's sort of why his movies are so good in this trilogy, is that it takes zombie horror, police action movies, and sci-fi invasion, but always puts it in a world that is very close to what we know. And he's not trying to create like a Guy Ritchie, like over the top. Everyone's a fucking gangster, right? Everyone got me. He's a cheeky geezer. Owns a shotgun, blows up people's heads, and I got diamonds up my arse, and yeah, blimey. He's not doing that. He's not doing that.
You had so much fun just then. You were grinning like a fucking kid on Christmas. But no, we're talking a minute ago about how like, when movies serve as artifacts of the era they emerged from. And like, yeah, Notting Hill and Snatch are useless to understanding contemporary English life. They're
useful in some ways.
Well, not really. Like they're both aggressively genre movies. And I think that Hot Fuzz is like, we're going to make a genre movie, but what we're going to explore is this idea that like, rustic rural England is this like haven of nostalgia and peaceful, small town life. But really it's rotten and corrupt and a thin veneer over the inherent rottenness of life and what it means to put on an appearance that where you actually start taking life to preserve this illusion about normalcy, this illusion about a bucolic English countryside. And I think that's really interesting, where it's like it's actually engaging with, what it means when we try to replace meaning with these sort of empty symbolic gestures like Snatch and like Notting Hill. Like, what's the cost of that?
Right. It's something that I didn't really think about. I mean, obviously I thought about the political and emotional points, but yeah, to put it in that context of like actively trying to create a fictional world that really does feel like a real world, really does point to why Edgar Wright's this trilogy is so affecting as satire. I was just curious, in your research, did you do they actually do this like Village of the Year award in the UK?
I mean, you're asking me if I researched a very specific part of this movie. I did not do that. But okay.
Well, that's why I asked if you did the research, not if you knew.
Shut up. The scenes for this, they shot the movie in Edgar Wright's hometown, Wells, which I guess their slogan is the smallest city in England.
Right, because they actually digitally removed the cathedral, because apparently in Britain, a city is the term city is about places that were built around a cathedral, and the term village is and towns are for places that don't have a cathedral. So Edgar Wright, I mean, he's talking about verisimilitude and trying to paint a real picture. Well, he's the one who's digitally removing the cathedral to make his town.
What a dumb point. Thanks, Charles.
Wow, I thought that was a good point.
It's not. Well, think about this. Okay, so I was like working in New York City in the world of media for years.
Oh, were you? Oh,
I was. Yes, I was.
Did you have any awards in that heyday?
Not from that era, no. what I'm getting to that.
Pre-award, but
I'm saying like,
but during the time where you were a urbanite, a beautiful man strolling through the city,
a cosmopolitan, if you will.
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying, I think a lot of people who grow up in more remote parts of the country, the whole thing is like, you're going to move to the city and there you'll find reality. Like what you're doing is mundane and boring, and somewhere else something more real and gritty and whatever. I found when I moved to the city that things felt less real and things felt more illusory and more distant and more out of reach. It wasn't more gritty. It was just more stratified. It wasn't more X. It was more Y. When I came back to my hometown to become a journalist, now I'm doing stories on quadruple murder, suicides, and now I'm doing stories on corruption and racism, malfeasance. Now, like, I like that this movie is that same idea where it's like, Nick Angel goes from being like, he's like the best cop in London, and he goes to what seems like this boring, complete joke of an assignment in Sanford, and ends up, discovering that every part of the world, like, is as full, like the awfulness of humanity, like the stinking, the rot at the core of who we are as a species, knows that it doesn't discriminate between cities and towns and the countryside and the city. And, this idea that being, in the middle of nowhere somehow takes you farther from those essential aspects of the human experience is a dumb, made-up capitalist lie. Like, you don't have to move to the heart of culture to find, these fascinating, upsetting, disturbing, bizarre stories.
No, honestly, I would say that it makes it, like, we've been talking a lot about the Bay, and my mind immediately went to California. But I would say San Francisco to me, it felt like I was in a movie because everyone felt fake. And my God, you're just a silhouette. Next episode, you're going to have to install some lights. Like,
I'm not installing lights. Just keep telling your fucking story. Jesus, can you just be professional?
Well, you're the one that's dark. We're doing this as a video so that I can see your face and read your facial reaction. Like, I can talk to you like we're people.
You're in the middle of one of your monologues. Just finish it.
All right. Oh, yeah. It felt very fake to be in San Francisco. And, like, the idea that going to a place that has opera houses, we were talking about earlier, and, plays and
musicals, other bullshit that I fucking hate.
Just play, like,
God,
if you look at the way...
Okay, go ahead.
I'm just trying to talk. It's my podcast, too.
You're being a baby.
Baby Charles is here. The city is actually a place where I think it's less real, and it doesn't mean anything to be living in a city. And the fact that you can cover up, like, this movie does show that people don't care about towns. People don't care about, like, this focus of all culture is about cities and the vibrancy of that. But, like, so that means that all these smaller places can get away with actual corruption on a day-to-day level, just systemically. And no one gives a shit.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's this whole idea of, like, turning a blind eye to a place that actually has a tremendous amount of power. And you think about, like, electoral politics in this country, and it's like, who votes for Trump? It's suburban white people. Like, who votes for Trump? It's landowning, bourgeois, well-off people who don't live in the cities, who fear the city, who fear racial diversity, who fear, heteronormativity, who fear, or not normativity, who fear, like, a heterodox culture. Like, those are the people who have an immense amount of power. And when you sort of ignore, when you write off that group of people as, like, and again, Lynch gets into this in Blue Velvet, where it's like this nameless American suburb is actually the focal point of pure evil.
Yeah. And it's like the way we gerrymander and set up, like, power is very clearly set up so that cities actually, the way the Electoral College works and everything, cities are being, they don't have as much power as these other places. It's really frustrating to live in a country that so actively is taking away, like, using that power to its own destruction. I don't understand Republicans at all. Like, Republican politics is all about destroying everything that isn't a rich person. Well, and yet so many people that aren't rich are just, like, suckered into believing that the American way must be preserved.
Well, it's not like I don't understand it. I think the idea, and it's just, the legacy of Reagan, which is like big government equals communism. Government involvement equals control. Government power leads to totalitarianism, and like that's the narrative that like launched this era of conservatism into power, which is that like we want less control in our lives and less presence of government. But of course, you know, the obvious thing is that in a deeply divided culture where there's very clear, you know, white supremacy and intense classism, and you know, what you're really doing is preserving this ossified system where there's no upward mobility. And if you're not part of this, you know, superior class legally and economically, you have nothing. So what that vision of conservatism just sort of enshrines that supremacy forever. So under the guise of freedom, and you know, it only preserves freedom for a very limited number of people. And if you just convince a group of people that they could maybe have access to that, they'll do whatever they can to save what they think is their ticket to that world.
Yeah. Well, maybe we need a little Nick Frost and Simon Pegg to come and go blow some shit up.
Right,
solve that problem.
So here's a quote from Edgar Wright about Hot Fuzz. In a way, Hot Fuzz is on one hand very British, on the other hand trying to be very American. That's kind of the joke. The film kind of mutates half the way through, and it's that point halfway through where they watch Point Break and Bad Boys 2. After that, it starts to go off the scale. That's the idea, really, is that it's kind of like the turning point in the film. Our idea was that they fall asleep during Bad Boys 2, which is quite amazing. I had this idea that Bad Boys 2 was the loudest film ever, but Danny and Angel fell asleep during it. I had the idea that like Keanu Reeves in The Matrix is like Nicholas Angel is asleep, but Bad Boys 2 is filtered into his brain. You know, if you fall asleep with the TV on, you start dreaming about what's on TV. The idea is that he didn't see the last half of the film, but he heard it. He woke up, and now he knows Kung Fu.
That's interesting. I like Edgar Wright. He's so funny and smart.
I think he overthinks, and obviously in our next episode, we'll get into what is the most gloriously overthought film ever made. The World's End is unbelievably rich with detail. I think most people really don't spend enough time digging through the intense amount of shit buried in that movie. But it truly puts the first two to shame with the amount of unbelievable depth it goes to. But yeah, I mean, I love that. Like he's saying like in this movie, someone goes through a transformation unconsciously and the entire film mutates to catch up to this, you know, they really don't even, it's all told visually. It's just brilliant filmmaking.
Yeah, and also even just to like have him be like, oh yeah, that thing where you fall asleep but are sort of also paying attention. Like what would happen if my movie did that? So he's just like, he works on so many levels in this era of his filming. I don't know, I'm sort of scared to see what he does next because Baby Driver was so bad and the rest of his career has been so good. And I just like, is this a turning point or what happened with Baby Driver? That we should get him on the show.
Hey, Edgar.
I want to find out what...
We love you.
Edgar.
We didn't like Baby
Eddie
Driver.
Baby.
The thing with Baby Driver is that when you dispense with the wink that he pulls off so brilliantly in all of his other movies, that there's a lot of meta stuff in Baby Driver, but like the full-on, this is a movie about the experience of movies that's so important to most of his other productions. Like obviously Scott Pilgrim is like a hallucinatory fantasy that could only possibly happen in a fantastical maximalist realm. You know, the fact that Baby Driver tries to have any sort of grit to it, it undercuts what's so powerful about his vision of storytelling, which is that it's all about these connections, and it's all about the fact that we have a shared visual language of film that he so deftly weaves into other pieces of work. And obviously, as we just shared, I mean, Hot Fuzz is inextricably linked to the American action film. Shaun of the Dead is inextricably linked to the zombie movie. The World's End is inextricably linked to, you know, sci-fi alien invasion movies. Scott Pilgrim is inextricably linked to the format of storytelling in general. That movie is entirely predicated on the idea that these flights of fantasy are made into very real, rich experiences.
Yeah.
And then in Baby Driver, he's like, what if you literally synced up things to songs I liked? And and it's like, as delightful as those sequences are, which are easily the best part of that movie, everything else around it is dog shit. Because the characters are just boring, thin, underdeveloped genre archetypes that don't have that wink, and it's not fun.
Well, I have a theory, and I'm going to just lay it out for you.
Please.
Shaun of the Dead, directed by Edgar Wright, written by Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright. Hot Fuzz, directed by Edgar Wright, written by Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright. Scott Pilgrim, directed by Edgar Wright, written by Michael Bacall and Edgar Wright. Baby Driver, directed by Edgar Wright, written by Edgar Wright. Oh wait, I skipped one. Fuck. World's End. Oh, sorry, back. World's End, directed by Edgar Wright, written by Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg.
Just for listeners, this is Charles trying his hardest, which I have to give him credit for.
I'm sweating.
He's really trying hard and still fucked it up pretty bad. But yeah, so
yeah,
you're saying...
It's pretty close. Pretty close. I mean, it did okay.
Yeah, it was...
Oh, yeah, I'll spell it out for you then. Yeah, the difference is that Edgar Wright was left by himself and tried to make a movie by himself. And it seems like he's a much better collaborator.
Yeah.
Like, Spaced is so good because it's like, especially these three movies and Spaced, they are Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright working together to make something. And Edgar Wright is key. He's a key ingredient, but he's, I'm not going to do the lemonade thing, but he's one of the ingredients. He cannot, I really think that he didn't quite understand how to make a satire anymore because the treatment of, what was her name in the movie? Like, there's that dumb song thing. There's the leading lady in Baby Driver.
I don't even remember.
Yeah, but there's a...
She's the worst part of the movie because she's given nothing. She's a complete
She's treated
fucking...
like shit.
It just sucks ass. And he struggles to write women generally, but it's usually not quite that bad.
Right, and I think that's why, like, I don't know, you sort of convinced me that Liz and Shaun of the Dead last episode was a little more, perhaps, in the same way that Shaun doesn't undergo change. Maybe the whole time she's like, it's more complicated. She isn't just like a poorly written woman character, but like, what's Darling? What's her? I don't even know. Deborah maybe. Anyway, she just is like, she loves some loser for no reason, and it's not a satire. It's just like, this is the only thing Edgar Wright could think of, it seems like, to make his story work.
Right. She feels like a device. She doesn't feel like a person. It's not good.
Yeah, because as you said, like, this movie is Edgar Wright songs Edgar Wright likes. That's like the whole point of this whole movie.
Well,
so
he structured the movie on these sequences that clearly he had spent his entire life thinking about making.
Yeah.
And the focus and dedication and care and detail on that reflects what he brings to the other movies, which similarly are love letters to things that he loves. Mm-hmm. And then the rest of Baby Driver feels like baggage around those things. That, I mean, it's a missed opportunity. But I mean, look, this is a Hot Fuzz episode. We get it. We don't like Baby Driver. It doesn't work.
That's true. So in the Hot Fuzz episode, going back to Shaun of the Dead, when I was listening to their commentary, like their relationship is like, even just listening to them talk about the movie they made, like you can tell how invested and like how much of a role Simon Pegg had in everything. So I think all three of these movies really work because it's a Simon Pegg, Edgar Wright joint. It isn't just him by himself.
Yeah. Well, that was a long walk, but we got there.
We did it! So I actually watched this movie without the commentary from start to finish as a movie because this is the one I've seen the least. It was the one that I liked the least when I first saw it. I was one of those people that like wasn't really into it the first time I saw it.
Same here.
And then,
it took me a little bit. I think getting older, this movie hits a lot different getting older.
Yeah, and it like now that I've seen it a few times and like had a little more, especially, I think, to me, we're going to get to it next episode, but The World's End is the like decoder ring to help me understand the previous two movies. But yeah, so like having seen that and then coming back to this, it's joyful, it's hilarious, but it's also doing that same thing that we were talking about last time.
Do you want to get more? Just please be specific to make a point.
Oh, I'm leading you into it. I don't want to make all the points.
You're not making all the points.
I'm not making any points.
How could you conceivably listen? Right, you're just sort of saying generalities. Be specific. What is being decoded? What is the same kind of thing? I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Okay.
Please.
Well, to me, these movies are...
Just say them.
To me, these movies...
Say your thoughts. Conceive them in your head.
I got them in my head.
Say them on the podcast.
I'm just trying
Don't allude to them. Say them. We don't know what you're thinking.
I just want you to have some zingers, you know?
I'm not concerned about my zinger ratio on this fucking show.
All right, I'll stop. I'll stop it.
You're dancing around. Just say the point. What did you learn on rewatching it? Don't say, I'm rewatching it, I learned something. That's not good. Say the thing you learned.
I made a commitment to good podcasting.
You're not living up.
I made a commitment to good podcasting.
Okay, so with that in mind, what is something you learned about this movie when you rewatched it?
All right, Shaun of the Dead. We got these two boys. They're friends. And is their friendship important? We didn't talk about the homosexual, like the use of the word gay, and like their fascination with like telling a romantic comedy where perhaps the two male leads are the ones that are actually in a romantic relationship. And this is, again, we have two people where they're both cops, but they're very different. And it is, I think this is the most, like their most friendship movie out of the three of them, where you see like this bond between two people and it grows and they become, like you see the this is almost like a prequel where you get to understand why they become friends.
Oh, I mean, Andy like seduces Nick into his idiotic world.
Right.
And this upstanding cop who believes in service and duty and being a badass realizes that you can also fucking eat cornettos and watch Bad Boys 2 and be a huge fucking dickhead. It's sick. It's like, as a statement on cops, it's amazing. Where like if you got like two like jack-off cops who just like end up pretending to be bad boys, it's hysterical. Like that is their aspiration, is to pretend to be badass while they do like the dumbest shit ever.
Right, and they actually use the word seduce. Like the scene where they watch Bad Boys together is after they get drunk, and then he's like, "Oh, you won't come up to me flat for a drink," and he's like, "This is like what you do when you want to fuck someone, is invite them back in."
And instead they watch Point Break, which again, as we've discussed frequently, is one of the greatest homosexual romances ever depicted in film.
I actually just rewatched Point Break, and I mean, one thing I'd never noticed was that the closest those two characters come to fucking is in the opening title, where the Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves, their title cards, and they just like mesh together.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And like that is like a tiny short film unto itself, is watching the opening credits. I think this is the first time I'd seen Hot Fuzz after watching, I'd never seen Bad Boys 2. So this was like, we watched it for the show, and now it was like, oh, I have a new level of being able to talk about this movie having seen Bad Boys 2. It's interesting. I don't think he really captures Michael Bay at all.
No, he specifically says Tony Scott is the reference point.
Yes. I was going to say Tony Scott, it feels much more.
Yeah. He's like, I loved Domino. He's like a hardcore Tony Scott fan, and I think the best part of the movie is the paperwork scene. He's like, I'm going to shoot this guy doing paperwork like a Tony Scott movie. And so I don't think it's trying to be Michael Bay. I think
but it's weird that he didn't mention Tony Scott, because that's like such a huge influence on this movie, and the Michael Bay elements are, I don't even really think they do too much Michael Bay shit other than maybe jumping and shooting at the same time.
Well,
but
I mean,
in like every action movie.
But they do literally do the Point Break firing a round off into the air. They do.
That's true.
Shit just got real, and sweeping camera. I mean, he weaves in all of these elements.
A couple,
so there is,
yeah. But yeah, he should have included like a Tony Scott movie too, a little trilogy there. Maybe it's just because he couldn't conceive of them at 2 a.m. watching 3 movies. I think he's right. I think that would have been a little bit hard to believe.
I'm happy you've convinced yourself you've come to a conclution about this issue, and it's nice to see.
Yeah, I did it all on my own.
You resolved it. You took a little walk there and came back home and said, you know what? Not so bad.
Time for some tea.
Bit of tea.
Yeah, but I think this movie this whole trilogy is about friendship. And I can't wait for the next episode. But yeah, I mean, this is like the budding relationship, and like you really get to see them truly become friends. I don't know. Do you have any? Well,
I think the evolution is like in Shaun of the Dead. I think, using my charitable analysis of the film that we talked about in the last episode, the preciousness of how little we have is underscored by the end of the movie. And in the face of trauma and grief and tragedy and loss, preserving the things that make you feel alive, like that is a victory in and of itself in contemporary life. And in this movie, it's interesting because there is like a genuine nostalgia in it, where like Nick Angel becomes more of a person by going home, or going not home, but going back to this like, small town life. And I think it's interesting. He takes a longer walk than Shaun does by the end of the movie.
Yeah, and is it even? I just sort of assumed that Nick Angel was a city boy, like born in the city. He's always been in the city. So, like, yeah, for Edgar Wright, it's like going back home and like filming at the supermarket that he used to work at. And for him, it's like a sense of return. And I think he can even translate that sense of return to someone that hasn't even started from that point. Like this idea that nostalgia is even like sort of built into this town.
Yeah, and it's also like in Shaun of the Dead, it's like I like the idea that his movies are about not investing in dominant culture, where being a super cop is stupid, living in the city is stupid, aspiring to some greater level of articulated capitalist consumer indulgence is stupid. Like, I like the idea that these movies tend to be, I don't find them regressive. I find them like there is real human connection to be found in the world, and you don't have to invest in the monoculture or all the indicators that society sends you to in a deeply materialist, secularized, shallow, mainstream way. Like, you can find meaning in quiet places, in intimate things, in personal connection. And I think this is like another love letter to that idea that, the idea of like, by the end of the movie, he got the job and won the girl. And it's like, no, by the end of the movie, you can realize, what's fun? Hanging out with your friends, having a real relationship, finding things that you're passionate about, taking pleasure in simple things. I think it'd be easy to like look at some of these movies, and I think lazily I have in the past been like, oh, this is all about regression, and it's all about what if we had, what if we could live in this infantile, masculine and adolescence forever? But I think that's a little reductive, because I think the idea is that like, yeah, what do we see in the ranks of the police in London? Like absolute pieces of shit who suck and are like useless bureaucrats who are horrified by anything like productive, quote unquote, if you can call policing productive. Like with like Martin Freeman, Bill Nighy, Steve Coogan, all those guys fucking suck. They're like pieces of shit. So like, there's nothing for him in that. Like the traditional, getting the promotion would mean nothing in this movie.
It is interesting that I think both America and the UK have this like sense of nostalgia is a part of the countryside and small rural America, and where Michael Bay uses that as like I think like I rewatched Armageddon recently, and all the shots of like cornfields and boys drinking Cokes and dragging red wagons around. It's like I think he's using that to deliberately show how fucked up our idea of America is. Where Edgar Wright's doing the opposite. He's like showing that this isn't even really nostalgia. This is just life. And the reason why it might feel like nostalgia is because he's lived his whole time in a city where everything is a farce and unreal. So he finally gets home, sees the same sort of corruption, and the way he deals with it is like an American style way to destroy everything there. But ultimately at the end, he's now living a life that means something to him.
Right. Through the Hegelian destruction of the other, he discovers himself. It's beautiful.
Yeah, especially when he blows away that big guy with a coat. I didn't really like that guy. He was scary.
Oh, it's so good. This movie fucking rules. I want to get to MVP here because I really want to talk about this. I actually suspect, I'm calling my shot, we have the same MVP.
I have a feeling we are going to do the same thing.
Okay.
Do you want to try it on 3?
Let's say they name the actor on the count of 3, okay?
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Timothy
Nick
Dalton.
Frost.
Well, never mind.
Fuck. We did it again.
Really? You don't think it's Timothy Dalton?
I love Timothy Dalton. He's great.
I think the delivery of "Here Come the Fuzz" is one of my favorite moments in this entire trilogy.
So I think we're coming at very different angles for the MVP picks. Last week you picked like a second biller that really cemented the first biller's actions. And for me, it's like, oh, the first biller is like how I relate to the movie. And I think the same thing here is like Nick Frost for me is I understand the Timothy Dalton pick. He nails every scene he's in. He doesn't overdo it. He is perfect. But for me, I think Nick Frost is like the emotional foundation for the whole film, and his actions really drive everything. And if maybe my MVP is like if this person were gone or worse acted, it would like seriously detract from what the movie does. And I think if Timothy Dalton's character weren't as good, the movie would still work.
Well, I hear you. Like if Nick Frost doesn't embody a seductive depiction of mediocre idiocy, then you're right. It doesn't work. I guess to me, I think villains or antagonists or sources of tension are so critical because in so many of the more generic action movies we watch together, when you have a bad villain, everything else sucks because the stakes just don't feel interesting.
Right.
And Timothy Dalton's like fucking just foaming at the mouth, almost like Daniel Plainview level evil as a supermarket owner.
It's perfect.
Like he's just so fucking, early in the movie, he's like, I'd hate to have to kill you or whatever. And then later he is in fact a guy who kills people. Like, I just love that he's just so over the top and then lives up to exactly our expectation of that. Like, that's sort of funny. He's not a red herring. He is in fact a fucking psycho and the core of most. I love it.
This is one of those movies where, I don't know, a lot of times you're like, oh, if you watch it again, like rewatching movies is different. And this is one of those movies where you do have this is like you watch a whole new movie having seen it one time, and then you get to watch it again. You can like really see the way Edgar Wright's putting this all together. And then, yes, like from the first moment you meet him, like, oh, he is the bad guy. And because it's so upfront, you're like trained through all of your watching of movies to be like, oh, maybe he's the red herring. And then it's like, no, this is what Edgar Wright's all about. Is like, it's so obvious to spot people that are actually doing bad things in the world. It isn't like they don't even have to hide it. They can be literally saying, I will murder you. And everyone's like, oh, is he going to do that? It's like, yeah, he's the fucking king of the town. He can do that if he wants to.
Yeah. There's like the rapacious nature of entrepreneurialism and capitalism and what it means to be an owner, what it means to be in a society where being an owner is everything. Like, yes, that is the bad guy. It's not a fucking mystery.
Right. So yeah, it's this movie works on every level, and I think it's out of the three, it's the one that actually has like the happiest ending.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's Shaun of the Dead is, as we talked about, is sort of sad, and it seems like it's a happy ending. And like in the commentary, they talked about, oh, we wanted to do a happy ending, but ultimately for them that means like a fake happy ending. And I really think that Hot Fuzz is a really funny second act where we're so used to second acts being like Empire Strikes Back, where it's like, oh, this is the downer so that the third one can be the final triumphant hurrah, where we know that the third one in this is like the most fucked up, grueling, saddest moment of the whole trilogy.
Oh, that's well said. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think I love that, the thing that Nick Angel is aspiring to that he doesn't even know he doesn't have in the beginning of the movie. I mean, one of the best parts of the movie is him breaking up with his girlfriend, who is Cate Blanchett wearing a complete bodysuit. So she is indistinguishable from everyone else at the crime scene. That shit is amazing. Yeah. You just see this guy who's like, I am a cog. I am 100% a productive unit of this machine. I am a great cop, and who I am is being good at my job, and my job is being a cop. And very subtly, I think also through his peace plant, which is hysterical. I love that running bit.
Yeah, I was thinking about the same thing.
Right. His life is like, he only understands life from a standpoint of like basic production. Everything is for a purpose. There's nothing else. There's no fat in his life. He doesn't drink. He drinks cranberry juices at the pub. He's just like really is joyless in his expression of self.
No one likes drinking cranberry juice.
I don't mind it once in a while, but dear God, on a regular basis is bizarre. So I love the fact that, he gets his groove. He learns how to love. He learns how to have fun. He learns how to not take being a cop so seriously. He learns how to have a relationship that's not transactional and not based on like ticking boxes. And it is weirdly, I mean, I like that he like redeems a cop from being a shithead.
Yeah.
He like redeems a cop from being like a joyless asshole. And that's nice. I think we could all dream of a world where cops didn't fucking suck. And obviously, I'm not going to get into the propaganda strain here. I think this movie just rules, and I don't want to package it in with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's British police, which are already, I believe, demilitarized, right? They don't arm themselves.
They still do all kinds of shitty stuff, like peddling and cops inherently of,
But seeing how he is a good cop in his final form, where he's not doing the dumb bullshit just to be productive. He's actually helping the town be better and himself be better. But
if there's a vision of police as helpful and not discriminatory agents of violence and racism, yes, he gets closer to that utopic vision of what a cop could be.
And I think I always sort of want to go out for myself on. We talked about how he fucking failed in Baby Driver to make a woman character, and I think next movie is going to be a lot about the female lead. The first Shaun of the Dead is a fake romantic comedy where that seems to be what's important, and I think we talked is really not. This one, the woman, his girlfriend, is broken up with off screen before the movie starts, and there's one moment.
No, not off screen. I just talked about the scene where they break up.
I thought they had already broken up.
Oh, you're right. Sorry, but there's a scene where he talks about leaving with her. So okay.
Yeah.
Fine. Fuck off.
Yeah. So that's
shut up.
There's only one moment.
Olivia Colman rules in this movie.
There's only one moment where she's in the movie, and after that, he basically replaces the romance with a friendship where you have to really understand yourself in order to know how to love somebody. So like Buttersworth, or whatever his name, Danny Butterman, is like represents the sort of the solve that helps Nick Angel really like find out who he is and realizes that he needs to do that before he can love somebody else. And then we're gonna get to the third one where it's like a lot of this movie, I sort of forgot about it before I rewatched it, is about like the failed relationship that he had with his high school, like not even girlfriend, and like how that sort of everything is a haunting for him, but the way that he interacts with her and did interact with her is a huge point of embarrassment and failure for him. And I think that's why Simon Pegg is a genius, is because he, through space, through all of these movies, this idea of like coupling and falling in love with someone is like it like in Space, it's about how two people are forced to live together, and like the whole joke is that they're not actually in love with each other. And I don't think they become friends. And this whole he always is like dismantling the idea of a heterosexual partnership.
Well, what's our partnership to you?
Fucking falling asleep watching Bad Boys 2.
Drinking craft beer and ignoring our girlfriends.
Oh, fuck.
Oh, yeah.
I gotta go.
Oh, shit, the kids. Before we end the episode, I think we've covered a lot of good ground here. I want to do a sub-MVP shout-out for Patty Considine, who is wonderful, and as one of the two Andys in the Small Town Detective Bureau is fantastic. The "you've got a mustache, yeah, I know" exchange is one of my favorite moments of the entire trilogy. The fact I love it in these movies when people commit to the nth degree, and Patty Considine is just delightful in this. I love him.
I think it's funny that we haven't really talked about in either episode how funny these movies are. And I think a lot of time, like when we were watching them, like I remember when these came out, people were like quoting these movies, and these work because they're so funny and because they're a joy to watch, and that allows Edgar Wright to like really, and Simon Pegg to just like sort of like build into it all the pathos that comes with being a human.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because, we talked during our Behind the Paywall Patreon episode, we discussed how Edgar Wright loves Raising Arizona. And then in a lot of these interviews about these shows, he talks about American comedy like Curb Your Enthusiasm. And so there's this funny mixture of like really heightened cartoonish shit mixed with basic daily humiliations and grievances and frustrations. And I think that he hits that tone all the time of like, just the most pedestrian issues in the universe mixed with the most slapstick, explosive, full cartoon shit. And I think that's what makes it work. Like it is fucking funny. And like if this shit if it wasn't funny, these would just be weird oddities, but they're hysterical.
Yeah. Yeah. The British are expert at turning embarrassment, shame, failure into something that is ecstatically hilarious.
Yeah. So let's wrap up our episode. I think we'll just do it because we have to. Are you asking when will it end?
No, not going to do it this time.
Charles, nor am I, because I think we can end the episode with this. I think The World's End is the brilliant conclusion to this trilogy. I think it is the least understood of the films. I think as much as Hot Fuzz, you were saying like, oh, a lot of people didn't like. It's like Hot Fuzz is quite popular. It did fine. Everyone loves it. It's not as much of a thinker as The World's End. I think The World's End is a Baroque masterpiece that is the culmination of these movies, and to date the best Edgar Wright film. I know you're more of a Scott Pilgrim guy, but
I think so. But they're very similar. They're both like, oh, what if the hero that we've been like trained to think of the hero the whole time was a total piece of shit.
Right. We'll save some of it.
Not even a piece of shit.
Some of it.
I don't know. Like,
stop. We're teasing.
We're teasing. All right. So
Don't get
anyway,
hot.
if you
Listener.
think you understand World's End, you're probably a fucking dumbass. So rewatch
Yeah,
it.
fuck you, idiot.
You got a week. Yeah, count it down. Unless you're listening to this on a Tuesday or Thursday, or you might have less than a week at this point. Rewatch
The clock is
it.
ticking.
Do your best. Take some notes. Try to move beyond your dumbass sensibilities and figure it out. But you know what? If you don't, we'll be here to help you out on next episode of When
Will
It
End? Are you recording? Are you getting a little pre-roll?
Oh, yeah.
You're getting pre-roll?
Oh, yeah.
It's great when you let your girlfriend, your fiance sleep in so you can research Hot Fuzz interviews and shit.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I got a little Grateful Dead in the mind, if you can believe it.
I couldn't tell, but...
Yeah. I found some other good shit talking I wanted to bring up.
Oh, good.
Oh, I found it. Okay, I'm ready when you are.
Let's count it down.
Actually, one sec. Sorry, I lied to you.
That's all right.
Okay, ready?
Yep.
5, 4,
3, 2, 1.